So now we can work out that from our laboratory studies, we've had people cycle for 4 hours, i.e. we've repeated the cycle of the Ironman, and when they get off, we can then calculate what's their physical condition, what's their metabolic state. And if we then make them run a marathon, this is the state that they're in. And we know that they can burn a certain amount of energy from oxidizing blood glucose, a little bit from lactate, and much more from fat. So to get your 58 calories, you have to burn fat at about 0.76 grams per minute. Now, these are fixed because you pretty much run out of glycogen and you've only got the liver producing glucose for energy. So the person now, if he wants to run a 2:40 marathon, as did Mark Allen, or let's say he wants to run a 3-hour marathon, he's got to burn fat at 0.91 grams per minute because this is fixed. Can't change that. And to run what Mark Allen wanted to do, you have to run and you have to burn 1.2 grams of fat per minute. And in our laboratory, we'd never found those high rates. We'd got up to like 0.8, 0.9, but never up to 1.2. So the question becomes, could Mark Allen burn 1.2 grams of fat per minute under those circumstances? So that's, if the metabolic model of fatigue is correct, in other words, its fuel's terribly important. The difference between running the final marathon on 2:40 versus 3 hours 30 would be a 51% greater capacity to burn fat when body carbohydrate stores are depleted. So the question is, can humans oxidize fat at 1.2 grams per hour during exercise? And remember, that's going to allow this guy to run a 2:39 marathon, which is quite fast. You know, not many of us can run a 2:39 marathon. And this work is due to be published quite soon. And we looked at a group who'd been on a low-carb diet for at least 13 months compared to a mixed diet for 107 months. And it can show you can see what they were eating. The low-carb were eating 50 grams per day. The mixed were eating 394 grams of carbohydrate. And you can see the fat intake was 230 grams versus 120 grams. And these guys were mildly ketotic versus those. So we had them exercise in the laboratory for 2 hours when we studied their metabolism. And this is what we found. So this is the mixed group oxidizes carbohydrate about 3 grams per minute, and the low-carb group at about 1.5 grams per minute. But the fat oxidation is about 1.2 grams per minute. That's the highest values yet reported publicly. There are some other values. So we got it. We got the 1.2 grams per hour that we were looking for. And notice what's really interesting, that although in the carbohydrate group their fat oxidation goes up, this group, it's high right from the word go, which is really interesting, that your fat oxidation should be so high the moment you start exercising. And this is the total energy that the guys burned, and you can see on the high-fat diet, you burn mainly fat. Look at that. That is astonishing, how much fat is being used and how little carbohydrate is being used by a group of highly adapted athletes. And this is the muscle glycogen, which is also really interesting because muscle glycogen is not zero on low carbohydrate diet. It's actually quite reasonable. And it's much higher on the high carbohydrate diet. But after 2 hours, guess what? They're the same.